Welcome to Deep Dive Conversation on Chapter 2 from our previously discussed dystopian novel Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. You shared your curiosity about how this society maintains its stability, and this chapter really gives a chilling look beneath the surface.
It really does.
You're going to unpack the methods they use to condition citizens, right from infancy.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, Chapter 2 of Huxley's classic, we're looking at two key techniques here. Neo-Pavlovian conditioning and hypnopædia, sleep teaching.
Right.
We'll look at how they're used, what the world state is actually trying to achieve, and, well, some of the pretty disturbing logic behind it all.
So you should get a much clearer picture of how people are shaped in this world.
Yeah.
Going beyond just the general idea of control.
Definitely. It's about the specifics.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Yeah.
The chapter opens, where is it? The infant nurseries.
Yeah.
And the Neo-Pavlovian conditioning rooms. Sets the scene immediately.
Mm-hmm. And you get this picture right. A bright room, almost too sunny, nurses arranging bowls of roses, setting out these colorful kids' books, nursery quartos, they call them.
With animal pictures and things.
Yeah.
Very vivid.
But then you got the detail of the Bokanovsky group. These Delta babies, all identical, all in khaki.
Yeah, that hits you straight away. The identical babies in uniform.
It really underscores the industrial scale of it all. Their place in society is already fixed.
Right, and these little babies, 8 months old, they bring them in on these trolleys, almost like products.
And the moment they see the flowers and books, they react like any baby would.
Right.
With curiosity.
Yeah, the book talks about little squeals of excitement, gurgles, and twitterings of pleasure. They start crawling towards them, wanting to touch. It seems so natural.
And that initial positive reaction is, well, it's absolutely key to the whole process. This Neo-Pavlovian conditioning, it works by linking something neutral, or even nice, like flowers and books, with something inherently unpleasant, which is coming right up.
And it does come quickly.
Yeah.
The director signals, and suddenly it's just chaos, a violent explosion, sirens, alarm bells, just pure noise.
Awful.
And the babies, they just freak out, completely terrified. Their faces are distorted with terror, screaming.
That sudden, intense, negative thing, the noise is deliberately paired with the nice experience they just had. Flowers, books, then bam, awful noise.
It makes the conditioning stronger, I guess, that contrast.
Yeah, it amplifies the effect. Huxley's language there really gets across the sheer panic.
And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, they add electric shocks. A mild electric shock, the text says.
Mild, yeah, right.
The director actually yells over the noise, something like, rub in the lesson with a mild electric shock. And the baby screams change again. They become desperate, almost insane. They start twitching, stiffening. It's really horrible to read.
It is. Adding physical pain creates an even stronger, more visceral link. A negative association that's hard to shake.
That description of them moving jerkily as if to the tug of unseen wires, it just highlights how helpless they are.
And the fact the director can just flip a switch, electrify that whole strip of floor, it shows how systematic it is, how dehumanizing.
So after all that noise and pain stops, the nurses offer the flowers and books again. And what happens?
Exactly what the director wanted. Instead of curiosity, now it's pure terror.
They shrink back, howling even louder, just seeing the things that made them happy moments before.
That immediate switch shows how brutally effective the conditioning is. Shrink away in horror, it says. Paints a real picture.
And the director's just watching and saying, observe, like it's a science experiment.
Which to him, it is.
Then he explains the logic, or the twisted logic, creating an instinctive hatred of books and flowers by linking pleasure and pain.
And he has that quote, doesn't he?
Yeah, the really disturbing one. Books and loud noises, flowers and electric shocks. Already in the infant mind, these couples were compromisingly linked.
And after 200 repetitions, would be wedded indissolubly. What man has joined, nature is powerless to put asunder.
Chilling. It's presented as totally permanent, inescapable.
That quote says so much. Their belief that they can just override nature with science, wedded indissolubly. They're aiming for permanence.
Making them safe from books and botany all their lives. Safe.
Safe for the world state, maybe.
But then a student asks a good question. Okay, books. Maybe they don't want lower castes reading and thinking. But why flowers? Why make deltas hate flowers?
And this is where you really see the economic gears turning underneath everything.
Right.
The director explains they used to condition lower castes to, like, nature. The idea was, okay, they'll travel to the countryside, use transport,
Which sounds logical. Get people moving, spending money.
Sure. But the student asks, well, did they consume transport? And the director admits, quite a lot, but nothing else.
So that was the problem.
Exactly. Because, as the director puts it, primroses and landscapes are gratuitous. Loving nature itself doesn't keep factories busy. It's free.
So they needed people to consume things, manufactured goods.
Precisely. So the solution, his word, is, okay, condition the masses to hate the country.
But simultaneously, we condition them to love all country sports.
Bingo. And all those country sports require elaborate apparatus.
Clever. Horribly clever.
So they hate the free stuff nature, but love expensive activities in nature that need manufactured goods and transport. Everything gets consumed.
Hence the electric shocks for liking flowers. It all circles back to economics and consumption.
It's just pure social engineering, twisting basic human feelings, creating fake desires and hates, all for economic stability. Makes you wonder what that does to people psychologically, hating nature like that.
Okay, so that's the Neo-Pavlovian stuff. Pretty brutal, shaping gut reactions. But it's not the only tool, is it?
No, not at all. Then we get Hypnopædia, sleep teaching.
Introduced with that story about little Ruben.
Right, little Ruben Rabinovich. It's presented as this accidental discovery back when our Ford was still on Earth, as they say. This little boy, Ruben, his parents still raised him at home. Imagine that.
A different time.
And a radio was left on by accident while he slept, playing a lecture.
By George Bernard Shaw, of all people.
Yeah, some long, complicated thing totally beyond a kid's understanding. But the next morning...
Starts repeating it word for word.
Exactly. Parents baffled, doctor recognizes the broadcast, and boom, the idea of sleep teaching is born. Serendipity.
But the director says it wasn't straightforward. They hit a snag early on.
Yeah, they were on the wrong track, he says. They thought they could use it for, like, intellectual learning, facts and figures.
The example was teaching the length of the Nile River, wasn't it?
That's the one. So the kid wakes up, you ask him about the Nile, and he can parrot back the fact, the Nile is the longest river in Africa, blah, blah, blah.
But does he understand it?
Not a clue, just rote memorization. When they pushed him, asked what a river was, he just broke down crying, I don't know.
So, useless for actual learning. You need understanding, not just repetition.
Exactly. The director's very clear. You can't learn a science unless you know what it's all about. So they ditched intellectual hypnopedia.
Oh. It worked brilliantly for something else.
For moral education. And this is key. The director states, moral education which ought never in any circumstances to be rational.
Wow. That says it all, doesn't it?
It's fundamental to their control. Keep morality away from reason. Reason leads to questions, maybe dissent. Hypnopedia slips suggestions straight into the subconscious, bypassing all that critical thinking.
We see it happening. They go to this dark dormitory, floor 14, 80 kids asleep, and this faint whispering sound.
That's the Hypnopedia broadcast under every pillow. They were listening to, what was it? Elementary sex, then it switched to elementary class consciousness.
And the director turns up the volume on one. What are these beta kids hearing?
It's pure social programming, reinforcing their place in the caste system. They hear how they, betas in mulberry, are better than gammas in green, deltas in khaki, epsilons in black.
Colors are mentioned specifically.
Oh, yeah. And how the lower castes are stupid, undesirable playmates. Oh, no, I don't want to play with delta children. And epsilons are still worse. It drills in that prejudice.
Along with, I'm so glad I'm a beta. Constant self-affirmation linked to their caste.
It's insidious, isn't it? Fed directly into their sleeping minds when they're totally vulnerable, and the sheer amount of repetition.
He mentions that. How many times?
40 or 50 more times just that night, then again Thursday, again Saturday, 120 times, 3 times a week for 30 months, and then more advanced stuff later.
Just relentless, non-stop.
It has to be to make it stick, to make it part of who they are.
He then contrasts it with the earlier conditioning. The shocks and noise, calls that crude and wholesale, can't handle the finer distinctions.
Right. The shocks create basic likes and dislikes, but Hypnopedia uses words without reason for the deeper stuff. Beliefs, values, social identity. It's more subtle, more pervasive.
That's why the director calls it the greatest moralizing and socializing force of all time. It shapes their whole worldview.
Absolutely. It's central to keeping the society stable and stratified.
And he wraps it up with that really powerful, honestly terrifying statement.
Which one?
Till at last, the child's mind is these suggestions. And the sum of the suggestions is the child's mind.
Ah, yes.
And not the child's mind only, the adult's mind too, all his life long. The mind that judges and desires and decides, made up of these suggestions. But all these suggestions are our suggestions.
Yeah. He's almost triumphant there. Suggestions from the state. It's total psychological ownership.
They're not just controlling behavior, they're literally building minds to fit the state's design.
That's the goal. Lifelong conformity, acceptance. The individual mind basically becomes an echo of the state's ideology.
So as you can hear, the world state isn't just about force. It's this incredibly detailed psychological engineering, starting from birth. Innocent things like flowers twisted to serve economics.
And those quiet whispers in the dark, instilling hierarchy, limiting empathy, shaping who you even think you are.
What's really striking is how it all bypasses conscious thought, doesn't it? Goes straight for the emotions, the subconscious beliefs.
It really does, and it definitely makes you think about other kinds of conditioning or influence, maybe less obvious ones, in our own world.
For sure. Well, this deep dive into Chapter 2 really lays bare the mechanics of control in Brave New World. Hopefully it sparked some aha moments for you listening.
Was there anything that particularly stood out to you from this chapter?
Yeah, what questions does it raise for you about that tension between, say, individual freedom and the demands of a stable society? Lots to think about there. We really encourage you to keep exploring these ideas.